Hi, it's Tonya Schulte with the Profit Constructors, where we help you run with the big dogs. And this is the last in our 4-part series about budgeting. Budget like a boss. Have you ever finished a job thinking you were going to make a decent profit only to realize at the end that there's nothing left? And then you're just staring at your report, scratching your head, wondering where did the money go? Well, if that's ever happened to you, you're not alone, and you're not a bad contractor. But chances are the real issue wasn't your crew or your supplier, your estimator. It's probably that you built a budget and then never looked at it again. So let's talk about budgeting and how to use it. The truth is, a lot of people budget and then walk away from that budget, and they use it to maybe inform the estimate, but then they don't do anything more with it. Well, your budget should not be set in stone. Real world jobs change, and your budget should too. At the Profit Constructors, we don't believe in stagnant budgets. They're living documents. And when you know there's going to be a change, up or down, you need to go ahead and make that change right then. So you basically have 2 choices. You can either create a client-facing change order, or you can go ahead and log an internal budget adjustment with a note. Either way, the budget needs to change. So let's say that you're doing some work on the job and the client comes and asks you to add to the scope of work. Well, obviously that's going to be your client-facing change order. But if you're adding any labor or materials or any sort of subcontractor work to that client-facing change order, well, obviously your budget needs to increase for the entire job. Alternatively, let's say that you have labor overruns. Maybe you budgeted for a certain amount of labor and your crews just aren't enough to cover everything for this job, and now you have to hire some temp labor to perform the work. Well, you may not be able to create a client-facing change order, but you still do need to make an internal budget adjustment and note the reasons. All right, let's look at how this works live in Knowify. So first we're going to head to the plan and track screen in any project. So you get there by going to contract jobs, and let's take a look at an ongoing job. When you get into plan and track, which is where we're tracking budgets versus actuals, you can take a look at any place where you are feeling like you might need to have a budget adjustment. Let's say that we've just found out that we're going to need to be doing an extra bit of scope of work for the underground portion of this job. Well, the first thing you'd want to do, as we mentioned, is go ahead and create that client-facing change order. So we'll create an underground scope update. And let's say that it's going to be for $10,000. Now, we could send this out to the client for signature, or we can just go ahead and say the client has already approved this change order and go ahead and make it active. Once we've made it active, again, one of the main things that we need to do is make sure that we are updating our budget in the plan and track. So we're going to click on this little gear icon, and we're going to select this, Create, Phase, and Plan automatically. That's going to push this new change order that we've sent to the client back over to plan and track for us. So now then, rather than affecting our original underground scope, we have an internal change order where we can add any budgetary items that need to be added to cover the cost of this new scope. And then always remember to make that plan and track active as well. Now, what happens if we find out that this scope perhaps is increasing and we can't create that client facing change order? Again, what I would do is go ahead and switch your plan and track to budget mode, and go ahead and just add a project phase. And we can call this an internal budget adjustment. And you can call it anything you want, right? But this way we have, again, without affecting our original budget, we have a way to add any items where we know we're going to have to increase our costs, but we're not going to be able to charge that back out to the client. So let's say that a piece of internal equipment broke down and we're going to have to rent something to get the work done, but we're not going to be able to pass that cost on to the client. So we can go ahead and include that because now we know our costs are going to increase on this job, but we aren't able to create that client-facing change order. We just need to adjust our own internal budget. And then again, of course, don't forget to switch that back to active. Why does this matter? So let's talk about how we envision using budgets here at the Profit Constructors. So this matters because you want to keep your work in progress and your financials accurate. And your project margins are going to change as your jobs evolve, right? So the budget, every budget overrun really has a story that it needs to tell on your WIP and on your financials. And documenting that separately in those areas where we just showed gives you the power to fix the issues, but also improve your future bids and guide your project managers and field team more effectively. Also, celebrate the wins. Your budget isn't just a warning system, it's also a celebration tool. Seeing that you're ahead gives you the confidence to scale what's working. So anytime that something's working well and you can make an internal budget adjustment to adjust that budget down, celebrate that. Make it a big deal. Maybe incentivize your field or your project managers with those celebrations as well. So here's what I would encourage you to do. Make it a habit to do weekly job budget reviews, adjust them when they're needed, make sure you're using those change orders to stay aligned with your client, and the internal notes to stay aligned with your field and financial teams. So when something changes in the field, update your budget, period. You've come this far. Don't let the budget die in the folder. Open it, use it, adjust it, let it guide your business forward, because that's what it means to budget like a boss.